you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to make a general thoughts video talking about my thoughts on Final Fantasy XVI because I just beat it yesterday. This will not include any spoilers, like I said, just give you my non-spoiler general thoughts. I mean, really quickly, if this is the first time you've ever heard me talk about Final Fantasy in general, I'm a massive Final Fantasy fan. It is one of my favorite video game franchises ever, and so I haven't played every Final Fantasy, but I've played quite a few, so I think just in general, I love this game. I should note that probably just storyline wise and stuff like that, to me, and this is just my personal opinion, maybe I'm underestimating the previous Final Fantasies, but it feels like this might be the most depressing Final Fantasy ever. And not even just mainline storyline wise, I'm just going to, it's not really even a spoiler, but maybe it could be considered a spoiler, just saying like, right, the game is sad, because I already went into this because I heard someone, they didn't spoil anything, they were just like, oh, the ending is sad. I got to the end of the game, I was like, oh yeah, it's as sad as I thought it was going to be. In fact, they kind of made it even sadder than I thought it could be. I had multiple thoughts about how it was going to end. Whatever the case may be, knowing it has a sad ending might be a spoiler, but, and this might also be a spoiler, but like I said, it's not just the main story, it's also the side quests. I feel like maybe 60 to 70% of the side quests in this game have like depressing endings and resolutions. You're like, oh, that's dark. It feels like this story-wise, this might be like the darkest Final Fantasy. It might be like the most kind of depressing world of the Final Fantasies. But once again, I could be talking out of pocket here. But I mean, but I still thoroughly enjoyed the story. Obviously, I went into this knowing as little as possible. I saw a lot of the trailers, which a lot of the trailers really focused on. Obviously, you had no context for the story, but it mainly focused on a lot of gameplay stuff, a lot of just the general fighting, but gameplay mechanics, but also a lot of the dominant, like, you know, the Eikons stuff, fights, which are super dope and stuff. I think it's always interesting to find out how Final Fantasy is going to handle the summons, and obviously this feels like it's like they took what they did in 15 and they just kind of built upon it even more, especially with the icons that are in this compared to the ions of 15 and stuff like that. It's always, once again, interesting to see what summons they decide. I mean, we already knew what summons were going to be in this because of the trailer, unless you avoided all the trailers. I think I remember when the first trailer started dropping for people, having never seen Game of Thrones, but I know Game of Thrones feel and vibe. I remember people kind of feeling like, oh man, this Final Fantasy definitely kind of has like that very Game of Thrones-esque element to it, especially with like its medieval aesthetic. I mean, because obviously they've kind of like they've kind of gone back to it and pulled away from like the very medieval aesthetic that has kind of been central to like maybe older Final Fantasies, and it's just kind of come and going into more recent versions and stuff like that. But yeah, I could definitely see like the Game of Thrones aesthetic vibe, and just like how like bloodier and darker this Final Fantasy is in comparison. It kind of gave me like, tonally speaking, and just like with the blood, and but also like the tone of the story, it definitely gave me like Drakengard and Nier vibes. I thoroughly enjoyed like our main characters, but also like a lot of the side characters. It just ended up being a story, like I said, I wasn't expecting. But that's just on the story front. I thoroughly enjoyed the gameplay aspect of it too. Obviously, I think I've talked about this before, I'm not the best at character action games because my reaction time is horrendous. Like, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to this, like, I mainly stuck to precision dodging, but even then I'd say like I hit it 60% of the time because I get too antsy and just I'm terrible with timing. So maybe a second playthrough I'll be a little bit better. I'll know like the enemy's movements enough. Like, it was never like such a big enough issue that like I hit a wall a lot. I did from time to time, but very rarely. But my point is, even by the end of the game, I was still screwing up the precision dodging. And even parrying, I'd say I probably parried like 15% of the time, and usually it was by accident. There were some fights I got a good string going, but for the most part, like I said, I stuck to precision dodging, but even that was like I'm not good at it. But I liked a lot of the combo systems, especially when you add in the icon abilities and stuff like that. And I like the stagger system. I want to say 13 was the first one to really introduce the stagger system, and I like how they've incorporated it into this. I think I already knew about the stagger system like because of trailers and gameplay trailers and stuff like that, but still, dope gameplay mechanics. I mean, it kind of goes with just the game in general. I think the game is stunningly beautiful from just like just how the game looks in general, but a lot of the flair and elements to not only like the regular combat, but also the icon battles look sick. That is just, it's super, super dope to get some like big mega crazy stuff like that, especially considering like you get that decently early enough with the games. Like obviously like there's not a lot of icon battles, but it's still pretty dope to kind of like have those sequences be what they are, because you really don't get bombastic stuff like to that scale. I mean, I'd probably say like 15 kind of had bombastic moments like that, like kind of in a similar case when it came to the Ion. So like it does feel like they definitely built off of some of the foundation of what 15, like maybe, because I know like some people were very mixed on 15. Like I loved 15, but I know that isn't the case for everyone. Some people are like, it was meh, to like they liked some parts of it, not all of it. I'm sure the same thing applies to this, but I enjoyed this game thoroughly all the way through, and just like I said, I just feel like they built off of what was already there in 15, and because I already liked 15 a lot, it was kind of dope. Like I said, kind of building and tweaking on things for this game. Kind of going back to the point I had made previously about like, oh, the story being depressing. I was not aware of the bearer element to this story, and the correlation with the dominance and stuff like that. That's a really dark and depressing element to the story. If you've never, the game that immediately came to my mind when they introduced it, I was like, I wasn't expecting. I mean, there's been shades and elements of, you know, like storylines similar to this, I'm sure, in some Final Fantasies, if I'm thinking off the top of my head, the ones I've played before. But like it just, maybe because like this is the first Final Fantasy of this nature I've deep dived into in such a long time, that I don't think I know any Final Fantasies off the top of my head that deep dived into like something that dark and depressing, but maybe there are, and I'm just not thinking off the top of my head. But the game that came to my mind that I played recently was Tales of Arise, because it has a similar situation to like the Bearers, so it was just an interesting parallel, because I was not expecting that from a Tales game. To be fair, I hadn't played a lot of Tales games, but I was like, oh, this is dark for a Tales game, and now I'm like, oh, this is dark for a Final Fantasy game, but once again, it's a darker tone game in general. I believe the game came out last year, so I do feel a little weird being like, oh, like, but because I love 16 so much, I'm almost like, man, I'm so excited to see what they're going to do with 17. Are going to keep a similar tone, or we're going to like probably rein it back in. I doubt they're going to go as like dark with 17 like they did 16. I'm curious to see what they do combat wise, because it does seem like not a lot of games seem to be, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of JRPGs that are still doing the turn-based thing, but it feels like, I mean, Final Fantasy's kind of moved away from it. Like obviously 15 heavily moved away from that, and now 16 as well, so I'm curious if they're going to keep this up with 17. That's going to be interesting to see what kind of, like, will it be a lighter story? Will it be a similar like I said, I get the feeling like the next game is most likely going to be a lighter tone, considering how depressing this game is. And despite me saying like, oh my god, like the ending is sad, it still is beautiful, and it fits. It's not like, oh my god, it's sad out of nowhere. It's like, because the story had that built in, you're kind of like, you kind of expect, it's kind of what you expect the ending to be. Doesn't make the like jab to the heart any less painful. But it feels very befitting, considering these characters, the story, this world. It feels like the most benefiting ending, and there is still something, even in its sadness, you see, you know, when you get to the end of it all, how beautiful. There is still something to it, but it's still kind of like, it's still sad. I mean, I probably put this next to 15. I mean, I think this has an even sadder ending to 15, but I think 15 has a pretty sad ending. I think up until now, like, 15 was probably the most depressing ending, in my opinion. Once again, I've not played every Final Fantasy. I've played quite a few, but from what I remember from a lot of endings, it feels like the most depressing one. But this one definitely feels like the most depressing one, at least in my opinion. Like I said, I loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm immediately going to jump into a new game plus or anything like that. I've just beat the game yesterday, so I haven't done anything else since then. So we'll see, like, whether I'll jump into one immediately or it'll be a while. I actually am kind of itching to play it again and obviously get better at it, and obviously still got like 7 trophies I got left to get. But obviously these are just some of my thoughts. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Keep it non-spoilerish just for this video, but like, give me your general thoughts about the game. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Was it what you expected? Was it not what you expected? Was it what you wanted? Did you get everything you wanted out of it? I'd love to know your general feel and vibe for the game. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good